set a ceiling for how much we're willing to pay per click to stop Google from inflating those costs. And in doing that, we've seen, like, on average, I would say, sometimes it's like as much as like a 50% reduction in CPCs without any effect of traffic or amount of purchases.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growth Mentors, the podcast where we share snackable growth hacks, strategies, and best practices in how to drive maximum marketing impact and grow your bottom line. I'm your host, Matt LeBlanc, and today we're going to be talking about Google Search, how to unlock it, where to look for areas to improve, and the top elements to check to drive meaningful outcomes. You are going to recognize our guest, Zach Larimer, the Director of Media Strategy at Jump 450. Zach has talked to us in previous episodes, but he is humbly known around Jump as Search God. So uniquely qualified to be having this conversation with us. How you doing, Zach?
I'm good. I'm humble as Search God, a benevolent Search God, I would say. But an exacting Search God. I'm here to speak the truth about paid search.
Look, the truth is the people have spoken. We thought it was a silly nickname. You've tried to brush it off quite a few times, and they're being the people are being very insistent about it. You know, they write it in Slack. They call it to your face. There's a lot of talk. So
there is a lot of talk. It's
own it.
I'm owning it. Yeah. And am I the first return guest on Growth Mentors?
You are currently our first return mentor. Yeah.
another title. I want like a 5-timers SNL jacket when we get to that point.
Well, you know, I was actually going to ask you, have you ever been a mentor?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially early on in my career, I worked at a lot of small companies. And we would bring in kind of like junior team members who had never had any experience with media. And I would kind of take them under my wing and do like a Zach digital marketing boot camp where it was just like a week where we went through every channel, all the metrics, things to look at. So I like being a mentor. I mean, like, qualities of being a good mentor, I feel like it's just as important. Qualities of being a good mentee, I feel like just like not being afraid to ask for help. I think especially in like growth marketing, there's this like idea of that you have to like be an expert immediately and you have to know everything and you can't ask for help. But I feel like everyone gets to a level by actually asking for help. So I would just say reach out to people, ask for help, ask for advice, because I feel like most people are ready and willing to lend a hand. You just got to ask for it.
Absolutely. You need to be humble on both sides. And I can do that easily because, as you know, I'm very much a creative brain. Google search feels very foreign to me. You and I have been sort of outlining this episode and this conversation. And, you know, there's been quite a few things that I've had to look up just for myself, just to make sure that I really know kind of what I'm talking about. So I'll ask if I'm unclear, but let's jump into it. I know you've got a bunch of kind of like hidden insights to uncover within Google search here. The first of which being that CPCs are inflated.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles being written about the Google antitrust trial. Lots of people kind of revealing and finding that Google and these ad platforms might be kind of like baking in inflated costs. And it's something that like marketers have always kind of known. I mean, the way that search works, it's an ad auction and the highest bid wins. But because all of this is happening in the background, no one can actually see what's going on in this auction. Like, you can't see exactly what that next highest bid is to really kind of make yourself confident that you're paying like the fair price for like a specific keyword. And like, I mean, with the move to automated bid strategies, basically like in the olden days of search, we basically kind of operated as like stock market traders, like in an old tiny movie, like buy this keyword, sell this keyword, or like manually pushing up bids on specific keywords. And now with the move to AI in the last couple of years, Google's come out with what are basically called like automated bid strategies. So instead of a human being putting a specific bid for a keyword, Google takes in hundreds and thousands of different signals from like within your account, but also who the user is, like where they're at, what device, what they have previously been searching to kind of like get an estimate of how relevant this ad could be for this person. And if the ad is really relevant and and Google thinks that getting the ad in front of the person is going to hit your goals, it's going to bid higher for that user to click on the ad. And so this can drive really strong performance, but advertisers have kind of found that by leaning into these automated bid strategies, you can get higher performance, but you're often paying more per click to drive users to your site.
Yeah, I just had a little question about the automated bid strategy. So does this work in that, do I understand that this is like you're entering sort of a top kind of amount that you'd be willing to drive up to? Is that?
Well, yeah, that's the thing with automated bid strategies is you don't put a ceiling. So you'll have like a target ROAS bid if you're an e-com account, where you'll say, for my campaign, I want like a 3x return on ad spend. So for every dollar I spend, I want $3 back. And then you let Google just do whatever it wants. So some days there might be $5 CPCs. The next one, there might be like $20 CPCs. And it's all going to get inefficient. It's going to get you that 3x ROAS at the end of the day. But the math it takes to get there might not always be the most efficient.
Yeah, I can totally relate with Google in that way. Sometimes I just want to like be left alone and like, just let me do what I know how to do, you know?
Well, no, that is something that idea is something that search buyers especially have kind of had to grapple with Google over the past couple of years as Google has moved towards more automation, moving more into broad match keywords as opposed to exact match, moving to these automated bid strategies as opposed to manual bids.
Right.
Search buyers have had to reckon with giving more control to Google while also still figuring out how to drive like the same efficient performance they used to have.
Right.
So with those automated bid strategies, like an actual example from some of our accounts we've audited for new business coming in, we've seen these automated bid strategies where the average CPC for a campaign is efficient. It's coming in at like $5, $4, like it seems. Like everything's functioning correctly. But then when you actually go into the search term report and you can see, for the most part, every single search that actually triggered that campaign, you can see instances where for a specific search, Google has bid hundreds of dollars higher than that $5 average. And that $100 example might not actually have driven a conversion, might not have driven someone to the site who actually did anything. And it can be hard to see because it's kind of hidden within the search term report.
Sure. And this is particularly with brand search terms, I think, correct?
Yeah, that's where we can see this happening a lot because theoretically your own brand terms should be the most efficient because Google's going to reward you for having your brand term in the ad on the site. Because it's your brand term, you're going to pay less than someone else who's bidding on that brand term. But when auditing these accounts who are using these automated bid strategies, we can see just really expensive CPCs. So I would encourage everyone on your brand search campaigns to look in the search term report and see if there's instances where you're paying just a crazy number per CPC. And a solution to prevent that from happening is what's called a portfolio bid strategy. And this is an example which search buyers love doing of taking something that Google intended for one purpose and making it another purpose. A portfolio bid strategy is intended to be one bid strategy that you can apply to a bunch of campaigns. So instead of having, it's kind of like automated bid strategies. So instead of doing one bid strategy per campaign, you can say, I want all of these campaigns at the end of the day to have a 3x ROAS. And with that portfolio bid strategy, it does give you the functionality to set a threshold of how low you're willing to pay per click and how high you're willing to pay per click.
Oh, okay.
So you're able to use the automated bid strategies to get the ads in front of the right user, but without paying more than what you're setting. And you can do this. You can apply a portfolio bid strategy even to just one campaign. So that's a hack that we've found with brand search. Even if we just have one brand search campaign, we can add this portfolio bid strategy, set a ceiling for how much we're willing to pay per click to stop Google from inflating those costs. And in doing that, we've seen, like, on average, I would say sometimes it's like as much as like a 50% reduction in CPCs without any effect of traffic or amount of purchases, just by kind of setting that ceiling cap and preventing Google from raising the bids to a level that we're not comfortable paying. We can drive more efficient performance.
Wow. Yeah. So wow, 50%, super substantial. I think you maybe had an example or two, a use case or two when you had done this with a client. Did you have anything to sort of share there?
Yeah, we did that for one client specifically, and without going into the actual client, because I know they're listening, it was an industry where the brand term is common. And what that can mean is that it's your brand term, but other very large advertisers in the space can trigger your brand term with non-brand queries, meaning that it can happen when your brand term is so common that people might be competing with your brand terms without realizing it. So that's where you can really see like extremely high CPCs. Like if your brand name was like Green Jacket, and you're then competing with like Zara and H&M and all of these huge advertisers who might be bidding on the term Green Jacket, which for you is a brand term, but it's just a non-brand term.
Right.
So this is an example of that happening. Where by letting Google compete with these huge advertisers, we were seeing really huge CPCs, hundreds of dollars CPCs for brand terms. And then by just setting that cap, we like start high, and then you slowly work your way down until you see volume decrease. By setting that cap is where we're able to see the huge 50% drop in CPCs without affecting our total traffic, which was exciting.
Right. That's great. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share there? Otherwise, I'd love to move on to the audience insights comparison. I know that you found kind of almost like a shortcut comparing against these benchmarks within the platform.
I think the only other thing to say that I'll say that with search in general, there's this idea that you have to be on the top spot all of the time, that it's worth paying such a high CPC because you need to be first because users just want to click on the first ad. And there's some truth to that, especially now with the way that Google has shifted the SERP. It used to be that you would kind of always see 3 ads at once. Now, sometimes there's only 1 ad in a big block of organic text. There's still value in being in that first spot.
Sure.
But we have found that you can set this bid cap of how much you're willing to pay and potentially not be in the top spot as often, but be in the second spot. But by optimizing your ad copy to make sure that even if you're in the second spot, you have compelling creative that's going to get people to click through, you can afford paying less per click while still like winning the click, if that makes sense. Like still winning the search by getting someone to click on your ad that's not in the first spot just because you have a better ad.
Yeah. And sometimes people like second options, you know. We fight for underdogs. So don't be afraid. I'm just teasing.
I love an underdog. I agree with that. I do sometimes I will click on the second or third ad if it's like a really good ad, just because like I want to reward that buyer. Like that was a good headline. You get the click.
Mine is a lot more squishy. I'll see the person in that top spot and I imagine like that football player from high school or something. I'm like, look at you all squeaky clean and perfect in that number 1 spot. Let me see what my boy down here is all about first. You know.
And you're the favorite kind of search consumer. We love that.
I wish I was teasing, but this is you know, we're all very subjective in the choices that we make sometimes. So anyway, audience insight comparisons. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, there is a whole suite of audiences within Google Ads. I think that most people who have run Google Ads know that you can target based on age or demographic for most campaign types, and you can add in a bunch of different audiences that are kind of like out of the box within Google. So things like affinity audiences, which are similar to Facebook interest audiences, where you're targeting people based off of like what they like and who they are. So if they're fashionistas or if they're really into Broadway shows or like theater, you can add that in, or you can target based on what they're in market for. So based on what they're actively researching. So if they're in market for fancy cars or power tools, I don't know why those are my examples. You can target based off of those audiences, and you can even import third part, like your actual first party data, and activate off of those audiences. So there's a lot of different audiences within Google Ads, but something that a lot of people don't know is that when you're importing your audiences, or even if you're tracking conversions within the audience insights tool, so if anyone has Google Ads open, which I hope that they do, if you go to the top and go to audiences and click on audience insights, you can compare an audience of yours versus a benchmark. So you can look at all of your converters and compare them to the benchmark of like the general US audience to see what your audience indexes in versus the general public, which can drive really strong insights, because if you're looking at your converters and you see that more of your converters are like 55 plus versus the general US, that might mean that by doubling down on that audience or making creative that speaks to that audience, you're kind of more like, that's kind of your lowest hanging fruit to find similar users, which is a very cool tool within Google, because anyone who's done paid social knows that lookalikes and similar audiences can be a really huge driver of qualified traffic. But you can't often see like who that similar audience is. Within this audience comparison tool, you can actually like do some of the digging yourself and see what a lookalike audience might be within Google, so that you can then make creative, make targeting decisions to appeal to that audience.
Yeah, this feels like a real shortcut to me, because the alternative is, am I correct to say that you're kind of guessing and checking from the beginning? You're sort of starting at the bottom and just like throwing things into the void to kind of see how they stick. And this is giving you sort of, it's giving you a benchmark to sort of compare to, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, especially with YouTube campaigns, that was a lot of how we would run, of just starting from scratch, of just throwing in, if you have enough budget, just throw in every single audience and see what sticks. But here you can really cut a lot of the fat, start with these audiences that you know kind of work for your business, and take the audience question out of it, so you can then focus on getting the right creative to speak to them, and kind of start with the lowest hanging fruit, and then you can expand and find new audiences from there.
Yeah. Did you have any specific examples of times where you've leveraged this with different clients?
Yeah. Again, this is a different client, but I should assume that all my clients are listening to everything that I say at all times, so I don't want to call them out. But there was one specifically that comes to mind. It was, I can say, it was an apparel company. And in doing this tool, we found that of all the audiences, the highest indexing segment was like coffee shop regulars. So the converters of this site were like 20 times more likely to be a coffee shop regular than like the general US audience. So it seems like a weird random audience like we never really thought of. But then in a YouTube campaign, we just tested that audience and it like worked really well. And we didn't even have specific creative that spoke. It wasn't like featured in a coffee shop at first, but just targeting that audience resulted in really strong performance. And that was one of our top prospecting audiences for a very long time.
And were you able to tell why there was a correlation between the coffee shop crowd and the apparel business?
Not really. And that's kind of the beauty of this audience tool. Some of them are kind of random. I mean, I think that the theory is that it's skewed younger, a lot of major cities. So that kind of makes sense that it would be like logically, you would think that sure that the audience is probably coffee shop regulars. But seeing like the actual number that this is like X times index is higher than the general public, it gives you more confidence to like actually test that, as opposed to other audiences that like seem like they might make sense.
Sure. The creative part of my brain is like trying to make all these connections right now as to why that people drink coffee also like clothes. It's a waste of time for our conversation right now, but that's super interesting.
Well, that is the benefit of some of these tools, is that you don't even necessarily at the beginning have to make all the connections. The number says it works, test it, and then you can kind of back into it, and find the reason, because that's really going to help you scale from there. But just to get like your feet wet, get like the initial good performance, follow the numbers, and then you can use that to scale later on.
Third kind of hidden insight is to identify price competitiveness in the merchant center. Yeah.
Yeah, so Google Merchant Center, is basically a separate tool. It connects to Google Ads, but it's basically where you upload your product feed, so that you can show product ads within Google Shopping and Performance Max, and you can also show organic listings. And you basically control all of the product, the feed, the shipping settings. Everything is within Merchant Center. And it used to just be a place to upload a feed. There wasn't really any reporting insights inherent within Merchant Center that like worked with any success. But Google has started investing more in Merchant Center reporting. And one of the most interesting ones that I have found, it's called a price competitiveness tool that a lot of people don't know, but it basically allows you to see who else is selling the same product, and how your price compares. In the olden times, we used to just have to search the same product a lot, and just like write down the prices and see how competitive we were. But with this, it just scans everything with the same SKU, like the same product, and you can see how competitive your products are. Which I would say is really crucial for any brand that has multiple distributors of your product. Like I'm thinking of an example of a brand that we had that had deals with so many brick and mortar stores, a lot of different online points of sales. There was a lot of different points where people could buy this product. And we saw that in 1 month, it was like in the middle of summer, like our performance started to dip. Like less people were clicking on the ads, conversion rate was lower, and we couldn't really figure out why this was happening. But then in looking at this tool, we saw that our percentage of products with an above benchmark price increased, basically meaning that our products were listed higher than competitors. And so then from that, we were able to look and see who had a lower price. And we found that basically this month, just like everyone had a lower deal. They were just marking down the products, which then inspired the clients to take more of an active role in the pricing of all of these different resellers and retailers, to make sure that whatever price they were setting wasn't impacting their own performance.
Right. So it was the resellers that were setting the lower price. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is especially crucial for brands that are using multiple distributors.
Yeah, brands that are using multiple distributors, or if it is just like if you are a seller of a common product, like if you're selling, like I think this is apparel comes to mind, like if you're selling like New Balance or like Nike shoes and like or like Uggs and like everyone, there's so many sellers of Uggs, like it's not your product, you're like buying this shoe brand. That's going to be crucial, especially in a sale period. Like we just left Q4 at the time of recording. But thinking of that kind of business in Q4, that can be a real indicator of how you should be pricing your products. Because if everyone's doing like a 20% off deal, no one's going to really click on your ad that's 20% higher. So you really have to monitor competitor pricing. And that's an easy free tool that you already have access to that you probably don't know about.
I don't want to hurry us along here, but I feel like you made that point really well. Did you want to set up the problem for us with this next one first, right?
Yes, I think we have to set up the problem first because it can be complicated. And if you're not involved in search, this is like in the Zach Larimer Digital Marketing Bootcamp. This is like day 3, day 4. We're going to get you up to speed very quickly.
So what's my pain point? Bring me in, Zach.
Your pain point is that you're running a search campaign, and you have a lot of keywords in the campaign. There's a lot of different search terms that can trigger from those keywords. Maybe you're using broad match, maybe you're using exact match, and there's all these close match variants. And you're running the campaigns, and you go into the search term report because that's what we're supposed to do as good Google buyers, of looking in the search term report and figuring out what should be a negative keyword that I should never serve against, what's a good keyword that I should serve more often. And you look in the search term report, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rows, and every row has like a couple of clicks, and there's no way to get any actionable insight because there's just so much data.
There's got to be a better way.
There's got to be a better way. And this is a huge problem and something that I really struggled with early on in my career, especially when I started working on bigger brands that were spending a lot of money, because you end up just like pulling your hair, like thinking for each search term, like search term A seems relevant. Like it's like best green jacket. Maybe it's not getting a lot of conversions, but best green jacket seems like something I should be serving for. Like why would I negate it? You can kind of run yourself in circles, like really debating the philosophical merits versus financial merits of each keyword. And it can be a lot. And I think what usually happens, it just leads to a lack of decision. You kind of become paralyzed by all the possibilities. And then I find that people just don't make enough changes in the account. So a solution to this is called an n-gram analysis. And there are so many scripts out there that allow you to do this. A lot of different tools also kind of give you access to the methodology. But really, the idea is that you're just taking a look at all of your search terms and then breaking them down into contiguous sequences. So we're looking at each individual word and the order that they appear in. And then we're just aggregating data based off of all of those combinations, so that instead of hundreds of thousands of rows, you're breaking it down into smaller building blocks and then checking the performance.
And so in layman's terms, an n-gram is kind of like a smaller chunk to bite off and analyze first, and then you're sort of looking at the sum of all of those solutions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I'm not a math person, but I remember algebra, and n is just like a variable.
Sure.
So in the example, the sentence that I wrote because I like cats, and my cats are currently playing right now, is the cat runs. And in the cat runs, we have 2 different 2 grams. So the cat is 1 2 gram because 2 is the number of words. Okay. So the cat, and then cat runs. And then within that, there's 1 3 gram. The cat runs would be considered like 1 3 gram. So there's different, like I said before, there's different scripts that you can use to do this analysis. You can also just go in Excel and break all this down yourself. But in doing this, it helps you see the performance every single time a word appears in a search term. So if we're just starting with like a 1 gram, you're basically just looking at each individual word, seeing how many times it appears in the search term report and how the performance aggregates behind that word. which can be really helpful because you can see examples of how every single time the word best appears in the search term, or new, or cheapest, or lowest, you can see how that performance is. So instead of going through hundreds of rows that all have cheap in different places, you can just see every single time cheap appears, how well it does at driving clicks, at driving conversions. So then you can make a better informed decision of like the word cheap in your account.
Right. Right. Can you give us I don't want to dig more deeply than is necessary here, but like, so what is the result of that, right? Like, if you learn this from the engrams, then what does that allow you to do within your campaign?
Yeah, well, it allows you to. I think the first big shift it makes is adding negative keywords more effectively. Because as opposed to going in and negating those hundreds of rows, you can look in your ngram report, find these phrases that always don't work well, and you can add those as negative keywords. So like an example, because I'm still on my green jacket, if you're looking at this ngram analysis, if you just look at the search term report, there's probably 100, if you're selling a green jacket, there's probably thousands of different variations of people looking for green jacket. And it can be hard to figure out what's working, what's not. But if you run the ngram analysis and you see every single time the phrase best green jacket does really well, let's say that has a below average CPA, the ROAS is really high, conversion rate is amazing. That then kind of gives me, as the search buyer, an indication that best green jacket is working well. I should separate that out, maybe into a different campaign, maybe into a different ad group, then make ad copy talking about how this is like the best green jacket. That's kind of like an obvious example, maybe like softest green jacket, or like green jacket for like rain. You can then figure out what's working and then segment it out and write different ad copy, push spends behind it, and you can do it more confidently than you can if you're just looking at the search term report and seeing thousands of rows of green and that all have like one impression, one click, and you're not able to really see what's working.
Yeah, so this approach, not only is it sort of helping you like on a case by case basis, but it actually is going to sort of improve the health of your overall approach towards your Google campaigns. Yeah.
Exactly. And it lets you make stronger pivots to your campaigns, and I would say smarter decisions. That is, I would say, one of the biggest things that I learned within Google marketing, because there are often hundreds of keywords, hundreds of thousands of search terms. There's so many different granularities that you can see within Google. That's the best way to drive performance in the account, is just breaking them down into smaller chunks and aggregating performance to see what works. So if you have like a product catalog with hundreds of thousands of products, not looking at every single product individually, breaking it down by color, by category, and seeing how the performance trends for those bigger categories, so that then you can make better decisions. And then once you're doing all of those bigger decisions, then eventually you can get into more granular of looking at specific products. But those breaking things down to smaller chunks is better for it's better for bigger percentage growth increases in the account.
I love that so much of what you're sharing today, it really just goes back to like really sort of universal advice almost about everything. You know, it's like the idea of like, if you're overwhelmed by something that is like too large or overwhelming in front of you, what do? Break it into chunks, like tackle a small chunk before you tackle a big chunk. It's like there's sort of there's like a lot of like logic sort of at the core of a lot of these ideas.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it totally makes sense. I mean, I had like a house party a couple weeks ago, and I hate cleaning. So if you tell me to clean like my entire apartment, I'm just like not going to do a good job. Things are gonna be thrown in drawers, they're gonna be thrown in closets. cats are going to be thrown into rooms. But if you say, just like clean the bathroom or clean this counter, I'm going to do a much better job. And I feel like that's true with Google Ads as well, because there's so many different campaigns, so many different campaign types, so many reports. Trying to clean the whole ad account or find like everything that's worth improving or fixing and doing it all at once. If you put all of that on yourself, you're just not going to do anything.
Yep.
So that's really why I started focusing and training the team on finding these like small insights, seemingly small hidden insights. They're going to have a big impact. So you do that first, and then by the time you do like 5 or 10 of these, then like your whole account is clean, your whole apartment is clean, and you can have a fun house party.
I love that example. Let me give you another cleaning freebie here. My dad always had this thing when we would clean the garage to pick 5 things. So it'd be like we would count to 5. I still do this to this day if I'm cleaning up, the house or whatever. There's a lot of clutter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pick up 5 things, put those away, and do another 5 things. It's like how I break down break down every room. I don't know if that sounds silly, but it's oddly satisfying and feels like it makes the cleaning go very fast.
No, I love that. It's the same thing. Yeah, break it down to smaller chunks. You're more likely to do it. You're likely to do it better because if you grab like 100 things, like me, you're probably just going to throw it into a drawer. But with 5, you can figure out the best place, the best thing to do with these 5 things, and then just keep doing that.
Zach, I love how you kind of wanted to kind of round out this conversation here because it's sort of like it's like teach a man to fish, right? So in our last section here, you want to talk about how to sort of teach people to find their own hidden insights. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is really important, and because we're growth mentors here, I'm trying to mentor you all as listeners, and I think that definitely listen to what we've both been saying of starting small, and that's going to be starting small is going to help you have a big impact. But I would also encourage everyone, like what I like to say is like be a detective in the account.
Yeah.
So kind of start with one KPI and just go into every single report that you can find that relates to that KPI, and then just pay attention to what you're seeing. And by that I mean it can be, especially like you have, if you're running ads for someone else, like you'll get lots of feedback about like why is cost up, why is click-through rate up, why is this individual metric up or down. But I would encourage everyone to just focus on one KPI. Like what's the big issue in the account? Is it that CPCs are increasing? Let's just start with that. Like if you're seeing that CPCs are increasing, maybe look at if there is a specific keyword that has like the highest increase in CPCs, and then really drill into what ad group has that keyword in, and look at the auction insights report and see if there is a competitor that has started increasing spends, and you're starting to see your impression share decrease. So like really being a detective and drilling into like that specific keyword CPC as opposed to just like being overwhelmed by CPCs increasing in the account.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you had something in there. It's actually goes back to what we were just talking about you sort of, you start small, you're like, this is the problem that I'm trying to solve. You focus on one KPI, you do your detective work and sort of solve that. But then once you have the insight, you're able to sort of like expand it out and apply it to a lot more of what you're doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like starting with whatever the core KPI is, and then you can go into the more like secondary KPIs, and then after doing that for a while, like you end up coming up with like a playbook of sorts, so that then it's like easier to do it in the future. Like if you see like later on CPCs are increasing, then oh, last time it was like one specific keyword that was driving everything up when I checked the auction insights report. Or if you're like running an e-com account and you see ROAS like isn't improving, it's like, oh, last time I looked at all the products and I analyzed like shirts versus pants, and there was like one product category that just wasn't doing as well. Um, by like being a detective and really like approaching the account as a detective, um, eventually you just end up with more knowledge and a better checklist, so that if like the same problem happens later on, you're able to fix it when it comes up later on. And I think that only kind of comes from going deep on starting small, but going deep on that small thing, as opposed to just getting overwhelmed by, I don't know, there's too many campaigns and CPCs are increasing. I don't know why. And just kind of like leaving it at that. Just like go deep into one thing, figure out what's wrong, and that you can go pull back from there.
Yeah. Zach, I feel like you must be a great mentor because as somebody who really does not work in Google search, this is not the area of my superpowers, to really sort of make me understand the impact that a lot of these insights can have, and also sort of take away more universal lessons from you. It's that's kind of what I'm left with after our talk today. But thank you so much for breaking all of those down. I always like to kind of end up with a little forecast for the future. What is coming up in Google search?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's coming up in Google search is a lot of changes. Anyone who's been in the search world knows that the changes are getting more and more rapid. I feel like there was a period 5, 10 years ago where you could kind of do similar strategies, look at the same reports for like years at a time. And now, like the last couple of years, it feels like every quarter, every couple of months, there's like something new, some new report, some new strategy that used to work or used to not work that now is totally flipped. So I think that everything is just going to keep changing. And a lot of search buyers specifically are very hesitant to accept that. I see a lot of Google influencers just like lamenting like what search used to be, and just really like holding on to the before times. But I think that like automation, AI, and search is never. It's not going to go away. Like the box has been open. So really, the best thing that you can do to future proof your account is just to have a strong foundation of what's going on. So you know exactly what is causing changes in your account, which again comes from being like a detective. So that if something new launches, you can kind of like predict and forecast what that's going to do to your account. And then when new reports come out, you kind of already have the framework set up of starting small, going deep, so that you can understand whatever new change Google throws at you.
Right. So lots of changes coming, and you know what they say about change. With change comes growth. Growth mentors. No.
No, that was good. Really, I was inspired.
Get out of here. Just to really wrap us out here, where can we learn more about this? You obviously know a ton about Google search. Any resources or things that we can keep our eyes on if we want to learn more?
Yeah, well, I know that Jump has a Google search checklist.
That's right.
It's especially for anyone who's running their own ads for their own small business and is new to Google and is just overwhelmed and doesn't know where to look. That checklist is a great resource of just like where to start and where to go deeper. And in general, I would say there's a lot of blogs that I like. Search Engine Land is one that does a lot of reporting of new things coming down the pipe in organic search, paid search, PPC in general. And then if you just really want to get into it, LinkedIn is just a good place. That's where all the Google influencers are. And they love talking about new things that are happening. So for me, that's like a really good place. I feel like Jump is a really good resource. Like if something crazy is happening in an account, I can go to the team of Google buyers and see what's going on. But also going through the LinkedIn influencers. And it's just like a gut check of like, oh, this is also happening to them, can be really useful.
Zach, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us today. Always appreciate hearing your point of view.
Thank you. It's really fun. You're one of my favorite people to nerd out about media
Ah.
with, and doing it on a microphone is just as fun.
All right, now you're just being sweet. If you are interested in learning more about Google search, you can get access to our Google search checklist in the link below in the description. Or if you are a company who is interested in exploding your own digital growth, please get in touch with Jump 450 for a discovery call. We'll see you next time. Thanks.